meeting is now in order. If you'll stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. West, if you would take roll, please.
Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mr. Hay?
Here.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mr. Mickelson?
Here.
Mr. Batolo?
Here.
Chairman Jellicoe?
Here. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Okay, the agenda is approved. We also have an addendum. We have a motion to approve the addendum.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the addendum, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Okay, superintendent reports. Mr. Jasmine?
Madam Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to be able to present today on the fundraising event that I'd like to be able to host. There's an opportunity for us to be able to coordinate with our community, and this is an event that I think is going to greatly help with that. And so what I'd like to be able to do is kind of go through the presentation today for you. In order for us to be able to do it, one of the vital components of this is to make sure that it coordinates with our mission and our vision. As we go through this presentation, you'll kind of be able to recognize that what was underlined here in reference to united with our community, we empower. I thought it worked, now it's not. At any rate, you'll see it's underlined there. We empower and inspire all students to academic excellence in pursuit of their interests and passions. Obviously, knowing that activities in athletics is an extension of that educational setting, this fundraising event kind of coordinates with that. So as we go through the presentation today, or as I go through the presentation today, you'll kind of see the coordination with how it ties in with the mission and vision statement. What is the goal of the fundraising model that I have presented here? Basically, what it's set up for as a general term is to recognize our businesses and to partner with them for what they do for our community. As we go through the presentation, you'll recognize that there's some of those things that are not done very well, and going through this proposal, this event, I think will greatly coordinate with that. So the purpose. Again, as stated at the very beginning on the goal, it is to recognize businesses for their contributions to Rock Springs High School. We do not do a good job of that, and this presentation and this opportunity will allow us to be able to recognize those opportunities. The second bullet there, prevent businesses from being hit up multiple times within the school year. About 3 years ago, I had a business come to me, and it basically stated that we bleed orange and black. We love our Tigers. We greatly appreciate them. And this was in January, so a full school year hadn't even finished, and they said they'd been hit up 54 times by Rock Springs High School alone. And so I identified a concern, and we need to be able to try to do something to help take care of that. So this proposal that I have, this event that's going to actually happen, will help with that. The third bullet there, funding that develops Rock Springs activities for a long-term benefit, not just for monetary short-term values. A lot of our fundraising that we have set up is kind of set for very short-term ideas. For instance, the best example to use is that it's set up for like team warm-up uniforms, that kind of stuff. Student athletes grow and develop quite a bit in a year's time, so that only benefits them for 1 year. By hosting this event, what we would be able to do is get some long-term benefit that would impact not only the programs but the school in itself, so that our upcoming 7th and 8th graders would have a benefit for those. And that's one of the pluses. I'm yet to find, and I know that we've got some in the audience, I've yet to find any coaches, any players, or any parents that have stated that the reason why they go out for activities in athletics is because they love the fundraising. I haven't found that yet. So it's an opportunity for us to allow our coaches to coach, our players to play, and let our parents be parents. Currently, right now, we've got it set up to where it's not organized very well within the funding system, and by having this set up, it would be much easier for us to be able to not only recognize with our businesses, but also if our businesses want to know what their contributions go towards, we can be able to clearly detail that. To establish longevity, we have had a setup with our community. We do, as it's stated in the second bullet, we do hit them up a lot, but by doing this one major event, it would allow the opportunity for us to really coordinate and establish some longevity with our community. One major event. And then finally, to rebuild the pride that is necessary within our school and our community. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to be able to kind of show what our community does for our school, and then for our student athletes and our coaches to be able to see what that long-term benefit is and to give that pride. If we build it, they will come. So how is the process set up? What we're looking at is doing one major weekend. It's a host and it's an event. It's not necessarily a benefit, but it's an event. And it requires all of our Rock Springs High School programs, meaning activities and athletics, to attend. They would have their student athletes that would be attending there. And basically what they do is they go ahead and they promote their program. It can be done in multiple different ways. They can do it through some type of fundraising of their own, or they can just do promotional ideas of what their program's really about. And the example that I use here in this particular situation is I don't know if our community is very much aware, of some programs, for instance, with our marching band having over 120 people there and having 4 years in a row of superior ratings. I don't know how much our community knows about that, and this is a great opportunity for that. The vendor businesses are charged a fee for their booth, and we'll be set up with a committee that'll help with that. Our booths then donate a certain percentage of whatever makings they make. It's kind of unique, too, that they would be able to go ahead and offer for both their program or as a school completely with that. Then finally, the community attends it. We have a great opportunity for them to be able to kind of see what all of our programs are and our activities are, along with the businesses that are there to get the support. And we just use that weekend to be able to really get that support in it. The financial structure, this is kind of very, very important to understand. The contributions, as stated earlier, they can be given to the program or to the school in general, however they want to be able to do that. I don't want to take away from a particular business that may have been giving their contributions to a particular program for a long time, but that's their opportunity to do it. All funds are designated to the school. We'd be distributed to a committee. So we'll have a committee, all of that school fund is set up, and then that committee will then go ahead and distribute the funds based on a need within the school as a multi-sport, multi-participation focus. That's going to be our first priority. So you'll notice here on the third bullet, some of them, it says multi-sport contributions. That's also multi-activity contributions. Some examples. Again, this is that long-term benefit that we're really looking at. A scoreboard. Maybe it's improvements or enhancements in a locker room. Maybe it's something like additional strength training equipment that could be used for all activities or athletics. And for example, with the auditorium, maybe it's a projector that we can use in there to help with some of those activities as well. Or we're even looking at maybe a big projector screen that's allowed in the gym that can be used for multiple sports, multiple activities. We would go ahead and break that down based on the financial contributions that we received, and it could go so minimal as to maybe it is something like soccer needs some soccer nets, something like that. But the committee would be able to design that and set that up. And then finally, I want to make sure and kind of detail that all the funds that these are used is just as an extension from the general budget. General budget items will be used with general budget money. We're not going to be using this for that purpose. Finally, again, we talk about recognition, and this is kind of a big piece of it. We want to make sure that we give as much recognition as possible within our businesses. We've had several businesses that I know contribute. What has it gone towards? We can give a little bit of that information, but we don't do a good job of recognizing that. And so one of the things that we did here is design kind of a sample, and this is a tiered system where they can have an incentive for it. And it would give them that recognition. We'd also have the opportunity for banners to be set up within the gym as well as within the stadium to be able to give them more recognition too. So there's a plus for the businesses. You'll notice in the next slide, we'll also want to incentivize that for our businesses. Currently right now, thank you for your contribution. That's kind of what we give. But in this particular situation, we can really incentivize it. We'll get some reserve seating for those that have become major contributors. We can also give Tiger Support decal signs that are located. So again, we had referenced earlier about how businesses get hit up multiple times. In this particular situation, they make their contributions. We go ahead and give them a decal that they can put in their business. This company proudly supports Rock Springs High School athletics and activities. And then that way they can say, we appreciate you coming in, asking for additional contributions, but you can notice here we've already given the contribution. So that kind of helps with that. Preferential parking for major contributors again. So interestingly, the back parking lot of the high school, wonderful spot. We can use those. They can park back there. They can have clear access into the gym, easy access to get to the auditorium, and even to Tiger Stadium. Any of our major events, they can be able to use that, even to the pool. It's a real nice setup there. And then obviously all-season tickets for events with activities and athletics. To be able to do that, I think would be a great incentive for them. And then finally, I know businesses are all about their advertising and want to get their name out, and we would do that. Not only would there be the tiered system, but we'd also make announcements at each of the games, at half times, as much as we possibly can for all of their contributions. So when, where, and what is the event? We've got it established August 16th and 17th. It's going to be at the Sweetwater Events Complex. We'll use that morning on the 16th to have the businesses set up their booths from 9 a.m. to noon, and then it'll be open to the public from noon until 5, and then it'll be all day on the 17th, that's Saturday. So that's kind of what we have it set up for. Our next steps, we'll really recognize that this is the initial piece to this, so promoting this event as much as possible is going to be key. Notices there, radio announcements this morning. At 6:30, I was actually on the radio announcing about the event, letting them know. I've got 4 other radio announcements that I'll be doing. Also, we'll be sending out a business flyer. I've spoken with Mr. Lee at the Chamber and had several meetings with their enterprise as well as with their luncheon. And the Chamber will help us by promoting. We're going to set up a flyer. We'll get it to the Chamber. The Chamber is going to send it out to all of the businesses. We'll offer the business the booths, and we're going to do this electronically through our Facebook page. Interestingly, I'll be meeting in the morning with my funds distribution committee, and I'll also have Mrs. Tolman. She'll be showing up, and she's going to help us with the electronic piece of that to be able to help promote it. We'll also be working on a waiver that we'll have to get to the businesses so that they know that the event is set up proper legally. Continue to get the sport and activity programs to offer the promotions at the events. It's been really unique, and it's been kind of an adjustment for some of our activity and our coaches to be able to come up with some of the events. But I can tell you that the ideas that have been coming about are really, really interesting. We've got one program that is going to go ahead and get a dunk tank, and they're going to get some people that are going to go in there, and you can charge for a certain fee to go ahead and do it. I mentioned to them, I said, I think there's some great people that would be willing to be in a dunk tank, board members included, and maybe our mayor, anybody like that. We also have some of our programs that are going to be sending up. One of them I think that's really neat, rent an athlete. You can go in, you can charge for them, and then you can use that athlete for the weekend to perhaps maybe do chores of some type, anything like that. So I thought that was really neat. Another one that we have is that I've been coordinating with our basketball teams, and we're looking at doing a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. There's a bunch of different things that are set up, but those are just some of the ideas. So we've really got a lot of unique opportunities with our activities. And then finally, we'll just make business signs to identify their support. So those decals that we need to get, that's going to be another thing that we need to do. So with that, that kind of concludes my presentation. Again, making sure that we kind of follow in line with our vision to inspire our students to academic excellence in pursuit of their interests and passions, and knowing that athletics and activities is an extension of that. I feel that this is going to be a great connection for not only with our community, but with our student athletes, our coaches, everybody else. So, any questions?
Any questions, comments?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bertolo?
Mr. Jasmine, the businesses that help us with this, are they going to be able to, do we have the structure set up to where they can use this as a tax write-off for their 501c3 or through the schools, or is that, I assume that's part of your...
Yes, absolutely. That's going to be actually one of the incentives that I think is set up for it, because it'll be a one-time event, and I think it'll make it very, very convenient for them to be able to do that.
And the second question is, when the money that's distributed to what you were calling the general fund, maybe I'm just breathing life into something that might not happen, but it has happened in other places. You get a general fund, and then you have a booster group that donates $10,000 to swimming, and then you say, well, we're going to give each activity or each sport X amount of dollars. That committee will make the decisions about how much money goes to each of the groups. Is that the way you anticipate that?
Yes, and it's been very, very pointed to make sure that we have people that are part of that committee that are going to help contribute to that. My focus, and I've had conversation with some others, is to make sure that that's evenly distributed throughout all programs. Most importantly, I know that in some circumstances, like you detailed with other boosters, well, so-and-so gets $10,000, and then over here we don't get anything. And we want to be very, very pointed on being very equitable to all of them. So not just athletics, but also involving activities based on those needs. And that's part of the reason, too, why we want to make sure that it has a multi-sport, multi-activity focus to help balance that. Great question.
Mr. Jackman?
Hey, Tom. A couple questions. One relates specifically to Key Clubs. I care a little bit about, I know that's kind of not an activity that people usually think about. Would they still be able to do their fundraising efforts on the site?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that will work with this is the fact that it's in transition. In an ideal circumstance, what eventually I'd like to be able to see is that this is the only event that we do, and that's it. We have made and we have raised enough event money for all activities that this is the only thing that we do. We understand that that might be a transition, so there might be opportunities. You know, okay, well, normally, let's use Key Club as an example. Normally they make $5,000. This weekend they only made $3,000. I'll still open up fundraising opportunities for them to be able to do it, but they need to know that if those businesses have given their contributions and they've recognized their decal, they're exempt from being hit up again, for lack of a better term. So that's one of the things. And then, like I said, as we get into it, eventually what I'd like to see, this is all we do, and we don't have to worry about it. And the nice thing, too, is then those programs, along with those businesses, we know what we have, we know what we need, and we can just proceed from there instead of, well, it's 2 weeks before the season or before the major event, let's go crunch out some fundraising real quick.
And then the other thing I know a lot of the sports go to concessions to raise money, right? Because I think Tiger Booster or whatever it is, the supplies, is that still going to be part of it?
Yes, that will still be part of it, and the reason for that is because that's an opportunity for those activities and those programs to also get represented. I want them to be out there. I want them to be able to see other programs that are supporting. So say, for instance, it's the choir that's doing concessions for the basketball. We want that collaborative back and forth unity that's set up there, so we'll continue with that, and then they get that fund from there.
Thanks.
So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Mr. Mickelson?
I have a comment and a question. I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate the approach where businesses can donate to a specific program or to the general fund. That is something that I think will allay a lot of people's concerns about making the shift. And this is a big shift, but I think a very good shift. So I appreciate the work that went into it. And then my question, will I still be able to give my tiger paws?
Absolutely, yeah. It's good that you brought that up, because that's something that girls basketball wants to continue to do, and they'll actually do it at this event. You can go up there and you can sign in, and then as part of that, then they'll go ahead and take care of your title plot. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? I have a question. Regarding the design and make business signs, I understand that the decal or something for the business, is there a thought about putting some kind of a poster or something like that in the gym itself, much like Western Wyoming has, their walls kind of posters with their supporters?
Sure.
Is
That's part of that tiered slide that I had that is set up there. So say, for instance, their contribution's $500. We'll make sure and we'll have a club there, and it'll identify their name with both in the gym and out at the stadium. And then if there's a $5,000, they'll be in that spot, and then they'll go ahead and get recognition that way. And then for all of them, we'll make sure and make announcements at all of the activities and events too. Maybe it be on programs, maybe it be in between games, maybe it be at halftime, whatever. We want to make sure that we kind of set that up. And the committee will help determine those. For me personally, I think that, at halftime, if you're a major contributor, we're going to make sure and recognize you during that time and also have you on the program. If you're a smaller contributor, we'll just put your name on the program. That kind of thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Use of district facilities.
I don't need the mic. Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow trustees, and also to our community members with us tonight in the audience. What we have for you tonight is some information and some facts concerning the district facility use. And as you can see, I have several people that are up here with me. We've been working to redesign what the system looks like so it's efficient and it's a timely effort for all those that are involved with it. So before I begin to speak in front of you, I want to make sure that I thank and introduce all the people that are here with me. So behind me is Nicole Bolton. She's our Human Resources Director. And to my right is Scott Duncan. He is our Chief Financial Officer. And I also have Dan Celaroli. He is our Director of Facilities. And to follow up, I have Stephanie Tolman. She is our Chief Information Officer. When we talk about school facilities, there's a couple things you'll notice whenever someone presents to our community or to the board. We always refer back to this strategic plan, and facility use really does align to it. And if you wouldn't mind just a second, let me point out a couple of things that I think are important for this discussion. It's really a delicate issue when we talk about use of facilities because it's really a give and take. We want to be community partners. We know that we have a lot of community members that volunteer their time for the activity associations and little league clubs and adult clubs. So there is that ever delicate balance for that. But what we'd like to share with you is actually some data and some facts for that. We know that the decision really rests with our board, but in order to make good decisions, you've got to have accurate information to do so. On that second goal there near the bottom, you're going to hear me reference quite a bit about the positive behaviors and relationships that we've got with our students. You know, I think one thing that we would all agree is that kids that are involved in things, they tend to do well. And it makes them a better, well-rounded person. We want them to have higher student achievement. And it also puts that community service into our schools, and it makes them better when they graduate and become better adults. We also want to ensure that second bullet from the bottom, that our schools are safe and secure. So school safety has always been a priority for us. We focused a lot on that over the last 5 years, and we want our schools to be safe whether our kids are in session during the school day, but also when they're in any of our facilities in the evening. So that's really a priority for us too. And then, of course, that last bullet, and I mentioned that a little bit, about keeping kids active, but also making sure that they're in a good spot mentally and emotionally. And so when we talk about use of facilities, whether it's for students or adults, there's really a lot that goes into that. And I think before we go into any of the data, we need to talk about what we're really trying to achieve. And it goes back to the students and the adults of our community. But before we do that, I'd like to share with you about why are we doing this whole systematic process. And so there's a story that we need to tell behind it about how did we get here, and then how would we like this process to look in moving forward. And so if I could kind of step back for the last several years, the board, at the recommendation of a previous superintendent, they waived all the facility use pending the implementation of an electronic system. So the goal really has always been to get an online system for people to reserve a facility. So it's got to be easier than paper. And if I truly brought in the facility use forms that we have, I could tell you it's probably this big. And I brought it over from when I was the HR, so when I was Nicole. And the amount, we'll show you some data about what it really looks like for the amount of people that are interested in our facilities. But it's important to remember, where did we come from with it? And so the recommendation before from the board was, hey, wait a minute, just put all the fees and everything on hold until you can get that system up and running, so that not only can people reserve the facilities, but also that their payment could be done online. So we needed to make sure that we functioned in a way that was timely for everyone involved. And then, like I previously mentioned, we want to make sure that our facilities are safe, that they're in a good working order for people, regardless of the time of day. We also started an electronic community calendar. Stephanie will share some information about that in just a minute, about what it really looks like on this calendar and the amount of appointments and reservations that really are coming through there. There's a lot. And then the consistency, I know this firsthand, that it was all over the place. You can look back for years. Some people were charged an invoice, some weren't. Some group had, fees that should have been in that they weren't. So really, we needed a system that was consistent for everyone involved, and so that there were guidelines that were clear for people. And then, of course, most importantly, like I had mentioned, was we talked about that balance between the community and the school district, our facilities, your facilities, and together as a community, while making sure that the business of the district is ready to go. And one other thing before, and I'm going to hand this over to Nicole for this next one, but district policy dictates that this information really does need to be presented to the board. And so we know timing is everything. But actually through the last several years, the last 28 years, almost 29, but I've kind of seen this 3 different times about facility use. And so whenever we get ready to move it forward, what happened before was we lost our chief information officer at that time. We had a system that was tentatively ready to go. And then what happened was the company kind of walked away from the system. We reached out to them and said, we're still ready for it, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So we believe that we're pretty close and ready to go, and then really the direction on those facility use fees would come before the board. And again, that's why we stand before you tonight.
I should be quick. The bulk of my job is dealing with policy and implementing them, and I'm going to tell you facility use has been a nightmare. And as you have turnover in leadership and new teams coming together, it goes by the wayside. Dan has been very diligent about, invoicing fees in order. We didn't charge them. I ended up waiving them all. but in order to start tracking what the actual costs were of our gyms, and he'll get into more detail for that. But the policy KG-X, which is the actual fee schedule, really defines events versus the activities. And an event is going to be something that, you know, a lot of people, requires a lot of staff, more custodial, opening and securing the schools. I always think of is it the Flaming Gorge tournament at the high school? That's a big one. Versus the activity of our little league teams, the adults that play some basketball, adult groups, or non-school sponsored youth activities that are just using it for practice that don't require necessarily all of the staff. Zach, will you click on that top? I can't. I don't think. Yeah, and you guys do have a copy of the fee schedule, but this is the fee schedule that has been attached to the policy for some time that has not been implemented because we've been trying to, well, you try to get HR and facilities and everything on the same page in one day. You need a system. And so you'll see that it is broke down by, will you go to the top real quick, Zach, sorry. We've got our youth. When this was developed, you know, you've got your different traveling teams or sports teams, youth, I guess, feeder programs that were on one fee schedule, and then adult activities and organizations. And this was kind of our system of how we had it broke down to special events. And then if you go down to the bottom, it did have custodial and staff costs and the examples of what all of that entailed, and it was at a rate of $50 an hour when this was developed. And so when people have been invoiced, that is what Dan has been going off of, and in all fairness, trying to adjust it to what the cost was, but he's done a good job at measuring that cost lately so that we could actually have some numbers to go off of. Did you want me to add anything else on that?
My turn. These next couple of slides are hopefully to answer a couple of common questions that have come our way. The first one about the rec board. So how does the rec board operate? What does it mean in terms of facilities use? And can you use the rec board monies for facility use? As part of the background, the primary source of funding is a one-meal recreation assessment, which is done by the board in July. So when you approve the budget, you also approve the assessment for a number of other entities, the rec board included. Most of that money comes in, much like it does for the general fund, mostly in November and in May, and it sprinkles in through the other months, but most of the big money comes during those two times. The purpose of the rec board, you can use it for development of recreational facilities, construction, program, maintenance and operations, improvement and equipment, but it has to be within Sweetwater County School District number 1. The rec board may also allocate and expend these funds for recreational purposes, and it can be used to support educational needs of students, school community use, and also straight community use. The caveat is that the school board, that being the school district school board, cannot direct the rec board to make any purchases or expenditures. And so to jump back to the original question, can the recreation board be used for facility use? The answer to that is potentially. It's not currently being funded now through the rec board, but I believe it falls under that umbrella. But again, it would be up to the purview of the recreation board to determine that as opposed to the school board. Any questions before I go on? Yes.
Mr. Hay?
Do we have that figure, Scott? Do we have any idea of what that presentation could be to the rec board? Do we have a dollar amount?
We have some estimates, yeah, and it's broken down into like $1 per hour, but we don't have a lot of.
For the year, do we have that a figure of that? What it would cost the rec board if we were to use that
to cover all of
to
those?
cover all the costs for the district?
I do not believe that we have that for an entire year.
A guesstimate?
I don't even know. I wouldn't even know to begin an estimate for all of those. Because we've only have history really for about the past 6 months. We don't even have a 4 years with the district. But what you'll see come later is kind of a proposal or a plan to track those 4 years so we have better data on which to be able to make that decision.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Next one is the Impress Fund, and this is a fund that is used to pay for officials and workers, and it used to be run out of the high school, and so this would be district-wide. So if you have a football game up in Farson or a volleyball game at Wamsutter or wrestling or soccer here in town, that this fund would be used to pay for the workers and the officials. And currently that's being transitioned over to the general fund. So now the general fund is paying for those things directly. So there is not a need for the Impress Fund anymore. And so if you remember last month, there were a whole bunch of reissued checks that came through the Impress Fund. That's an attempt to clean up all of those outstanding checks. And so once those have been cleared and we don't have any of those things hanging out there, that the thought is to be able to close that fund because it no longer has a use since everything will be paid out of the general fund. Questions on the Impress Fund?
Anyone? Please proceed.
Okay.
Scott and I are going to share. Scott's the only one we said had to use the microphone because the rest of us are loud. Scott and I will share this slide. The first piece are just the policies that really cover the facility use. And if you go to our website, on the front page that comes up on the left side, you can hit policies and you can type KG, KG-R, KG-X in order to actually pull the current policies that are in place. But those are the policies that really govern all of our fees, our costs, how we're supposed to charge for it, what we charge for. It has all of that lined out. It's just that we've had the ability to waive the fees until now. But now that we have the system coming up, that board motion is kind of going to expire. So Scott's going to talk about the next 3 policies because that's his world.
Okay, so the first one, the fiscal management goals, and that's to explore the sources of revenue and to guide those expenditures towards student achievement. And the next one, policy DG, the depository of funds, and that basically says that all the revenues you bring in has to be deposited into a bank. So you can't take your money in, stick it in an envelope, and then set it in your filing cabinet. It all has to be gone through the bank. The next one, policy DI, that kind of piggybacks the DG in the sense that everything that's received, you have to keep track of it. So that means issuing receipts for the money that you bring in, tracking the money, where it goes to make sure that everything is above board and properly accounted for. So those are the three main fiscal policies.
Our policy also dictates that people have a proof or certificate of insurance in order to use our facilities, and we all know why litigation is very high and you're held accountable for even the slightest trip. For the most part, we don't run into a problem with those. We've got bigger groups that have a lot more participation, such as Top of the Rock, Avengers, and some of those groups that have policies, but we do have some smaller groups that do not necessarily have a policy. And so with approval through legal, looking at some different waivers hold a whole different ballgame in and of themselves, that but we had to have something in place for people that did not have the proof or certificate of insurance. I can tell you if an event is occurring, though, we won't allow waivers. They will have to have proof or certificate of insurance in order to conduct any kind of event that is occurring within our facilities. Who's this? Hey, Dan. There you go.
This is me.
Oh, this is
Steph.
I'm cutting in line so
Man, I
early.
couldn't wait. I was
What the
anxious.
heck?
Okay, so now that we have our online system, which is FS Direct, it's through School Dude, which we use for Dan's work order system for, you have a lot of different pieces. Our crisis manager online comes through School Dude. we were able to go back and look since July 1st and just kind of see what the use has been. So these are just some numbers we ran on our gyms as we were sitting trying to figure everything out. I want to point out to begin with that this is low. So we first started training our secretaries on putting requests in the start of the school year. So in the August, we talked about it a little bit as they were leaving, but nobody cares at that point when they're walking out in May. So in August, we started training all of our secretaries, and not everybody was on board. We had a lot of new staff in some of the buildings, so not all staff were putting all of the events into FS Direct. But for what we had since July 1st of last year, for what people had put in, there had actually been 1,718 facility use forms for school gyms by external organizations. About 1,100 of the gym requests were after 6 p.m. and 598 of the K6 gym requests were after 6 p.m. So we're getting a lot of use definitely in our schools, and I really like the system because as we get more accurate and people start to put everything in there and the community starts to request through it, we're going to be able to pull some really good data on the amount of time that's being used for classrooms, gyms, everything. Our schools are putting all of their events also in there so that we're able to track the internal versus the external. So this is just kind of a for example. I wasn't really thinking of it, but as we were meeting, I pulled up the community use calendar, which there's a link to this on our website, and this is just for this week. So you see this includes internal and external so that people can see what's happening in the buildings, but you'll see on the 10th, and on all of them, it says more at the bottom. So if you actually go into that day, you can see that our facilities are being used like crazy throughout the entire day up until I think 11 o'clock at night in some cases. So it's a lot. There's a lot of people, a lot of folks that use this, and the great thing about the program that we're using is we're going to be able to track that and kind of organize it and sort it and get better data over the next year with it. Now it's your turn.
Any questions? Yeah. Mr. Patillo?
Oh, yes.
As far as the numbers that you just gave us, 1,718 facility use forms, I got to wrap my mind around this. Is that 1,718 forms that have 10 dates on it?
No, that would be that individually
okay, I was going to
picked
say
out.
that's
No.
almost mind-boggling.
No, that actually picked out, it classified each thing so we were able to calculate by the end times and yeah. No.
So all of the events we've had during that time added up to 1,718.
Yeah.
Okay.
Low. Remember low, because we had a few
Okay,
schools
yeah,
that weren't putting in.
I got you.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, to piggyback on what Steph says, actually it wasn't until January that everybody's kind of been put in, so you got quite a lapse of time. Facility use fees and custodial fees. We broke them down into two because they're listed in two. If you go back to your policy, you've got the facility use fees, and they range from $25 on up to, I think, $200. Some of the things that they cover: supplies, emergency support. Emergency support, a lot of times, during an event, we have to bring an electrician. Something blowing a breaker. You have issues with the heating system, so that's bringing guys in, paying them time and a half. Snow plowing in the wintertime, we still have to maintain the sidewalks, in which we might do from midnight to 8 o'clock when our shift usually comes in. But now we have to bring the guys in early, and sometimes that means they have to still go back out at 12 o'clock. Utilities, the utility costs on these. The high school, Mark just gave me the numbers, just on the electricity from July to the end of May was almost $200,000. Okay, now we can use the percentages and kind of figure out, but honestly, I haven't had the time to go through all the schools as of yet to figure out what the utility cost is based on the 15% of square footage that the gyms are. Then long-term maintenance. At some point, we have to be able to recover maintenance of these facilities. My last SFD meeting that I went to, we have $22 million of deferred maintenance. We chisel away at about $3 million a year. That's because that's what we get from the state, is $3 million. So we can only take care of what we get, and the extra use that we use, at some point, we have to be able to finance those repairs. Custodial staff. There is another cost. That's at $50 an hour, and we'll get into what we're actually working on in a minute. But what does that cover? If you're using the theater, because although we're using the gyms, because the gym is a stable, 15% average of all the school square foot, footprint. So we picked out the gym so we can establish a cost. So, but we still use the theater. When we have people come in to use the theater, we have to bring in the person who takes care of the theater. Sometimes there's extra help. He brings in helpers. You have lighting people that go up into the attic. It's a specialty, operation. Not anybody can do it. Okay. Next thing is custodial support staff. I know a lot of people feel that they come in, they'll sweep up, they clean, but the floors still have to be done the next day for the school coming in. It's just a cost. It's a cost that we have to have. We can't have other people mixing chemicals, so if they're going to scrub the floors, that does require a custodial staff member to do it. Whether they do it before, whether they do it after, doesn't matter. It still has to be done. Our gyms are basically used from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 p.m. That's our gym day. Now, what we did in order to come up with some kind of cost is, I took, if you see on the right-hand side, you've got the schools. There's 6 schools that are our big users. Okay, they're the ones that get the most concentration of use throughout the year. We pulled the cost, actually Mark pulled those costs for me of what we had in material costs. This is just supplies. From July 1 to the end of May, we had $84,298. That's for the total square footage of 6 schools. Now, on the average, a gym is about 15% of that square footage. So we took the 15%, we came out with $12,645. It comes down to $45 a day. The average gym is used 300 days a year. They don't get used on Sundays. Sometimes they don't get used on Christmas break, and that's just Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Thanksgiving, we still have some people that come in on the Thursday or on Fridays to use them. So on the average, 300 days a year. So that's $15 a day. And the way we got that is we took the $45 a day for the total use of the gym. When I calculate how many uses we get a day and then look at what the percentage is of non-district use, it's roughly 30%. So one can say 30% of 45 is $15. If you take the $15 a day, average it out to 6 schools, okay, that comes out for the material only $2.50 a day per gym. And we rounded those numbers up. They were like $14 or $2 and change. Okay, any questions on that?
Any questions? So you're talking $4,500 worth of materials from July to the end of May on extra stuff.
Right. Okay, here's our average. What we're trying to do is the custodial services are there until 6 o'clock. As of the coming year, they agree to work a split shift to 7 o'clock. Okay, from 7 o'clock on, because our gyms are still being used, and even if people are vacating, you still have to have somebody come in, do security checks, check the bathrooms, go through all that stuff so that the school is ready for the next day. So what we talked about is we have an event crew currently. The event crew helps out on Saturdays, on Friday nights, Saturdays, and a lot of our evening type events where we're having basketball games up at the high school. It's a tough position to fill because you have 4 part-time and 1 full-time, and they're getting paid the $19.45 an hour, and nobody wants to work those hours because they're not really consistent hours. You work based on what the athletic schedule is for that day, and trying to find a part-time person to do that with no benefits is very tough. So what we looked at doing is increasing that to 3 part-time and 2 full-time people. Now the $21.57 an hour per person is if you get a newbie. Okay, that's somebody who starts out on tier 0. That includes their wage and that includes their benefits. Okay, if we have an average person working an event, which we do, we have an awful lot of people through the district that are, they're step 7, so they're making the $28.66. And as it says, that's an estimated wage and it includes salary and their benefits. Okay, but we're still not working off of that number. We're still working with the $21.57, which we're going to round up to $22 an hour. Yep.
Oh, yes. Okay. So what we decided to do was go ahead and pull some of the actual scenarios, some of the some of the things that were in FS Direct that had been used. So we looked at 3 different youth teams and an adult league just to see what the use was and kind of calculate what the charges would be from January through May on 3 different scenarios. So the top table right there is with our current policy. So if you use the facility use fee and then you take the $50 an hour, you can see, like with Youth Team 1 and Youth Team 2, that we're looking at about $5,300 for 5 months, $3,400. The Adult League would be $1,250. And then the third team that's doing a 4-day-a-week practice for 3 hours a day is over $13,000 based on the current policy. We went ahead and threw the $20 an hour in because if the event crew stays the way that they are, that's roughly about the average of the event crew for a person. So looking at that one, that drops the cost down to $2,420 for that first team, $1,510, $650 for the adult league, and $5,540. Now, keep in mind, this is looking at all of the hours. We're not calculating that 7 o'clock time frame, and you can kind of see how we went across and figured that out. And then the bottom one is the $22 an hour, which would be the more realistic number if, depending on the event crew. So if you look at that one, the total due for the Youth Team 1 would be $2,612. Youth Team 2 would be $1,636. The Adult League is $690, and then $6,044 for the third team. So looking at some different scenarios, that makes a big difference compared to what's currently written in the KG-X policy. Do you guys have questions on that table, just for the different scenarios and what the charges would look like?
Mr. Batolo?
So I've heard people talk about getting an estimate here recently. Which of these 3 scenarios was represented?
That's based on the current policy, so the $50.
So that's the first one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the $50 an hour.
Okay. And that, again, that was a board decision that was made?
2013, I think, is the date on the bottom. It should be on the bottom of that policy. Yeah. And that, honestly, I will say with Dan, he's going in and assessing these based on each event. So he catches, if it's the same organization, he tries to catch, okay, no, even though they have 2 submissions in there. So for example, if Team 1 and Team 2, so Team 1 is maybe one day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Team 2 is Tuesday, Thursday, then he waives that second facility use fee and just charges the $500 for that organization. Does that make sense?
I try to.
Try.
When you get over 1,000 of them, we had over 1,000 from Christmas up to the end of January.
So, yep. So he's trying to be cognizant of that. But yeah, do you guys have other questions on just those 3 scenarios?
Anyone?
One thing, when we were doing that, we did break it down, say, for a larger organization, if they had 100 players or, participants, if you broke that fee up for them to pay, a year, and if we went with the 22 an hour, it could potentially raise fees per participant, upward of $60, $61, depends if they're at that example of the youth team number 3, on top of the fees that they have. So it broke down by participant. If that's what an organization decided to do, that's about what it would break down to, depending on the size of the organization. We just took 100.
Mr. Batolo?
Another thing that you just reminded me of is fields. Does this estimate also include fields?
No, the only time I put a fee on is if it's a field where they're going to use the field house and they're going to have restroom services. Then what I do is I look at the event at the time, and I've just figured that restroom service at the custodial hour. That's what I'm currently doing.
Okay.
But the fields themselves, no.
Any other questions? Please proceed.
So district policy on KG, it mentions a annually recommendation for facility use fees and custodial fees. So as you can see, we went through and we looked at what's currently happening. What are some of the use requests that we are getting? We looked at what is the data that we have so far in the system to get this up and running, and to really take a look and say, okay, when this was approved, when Mr. Botolo asked in July of 2013, we've got a policy. We can waive for so long until that online system comes. So we do have a recommendation. It's an idea to bring forward as the policy request. On that top part that you see in the chart, it's the bottom of KG-X. And so as you can see, we went through and we said, okay, well, what if we could adjust that as a suggestion to move forward? We know our final decision, of course, rests with the board. But one of the things that we would like to do is revise that beginning September 1st. So instead of the $50, we could adjust the custodial hour to be $22 an hour rate for the employee for the activities that were after 7. Now remember, there's a difference between activities and events. So for the activities after 7 and on weekends, and then all events charged for all the hours. So if there was a tournament per se, and then some examples below about setup and cleanup and equipment. But also what we could do is, under the examples up in that chart, is limit that to setup, cleanup, equipment use, and technical repair. Or technical support. If there was repairs that needed, that of course would be separate if there was damage that was done. And then also what that would allow is to monitor some costs. We know that Dan's got a great system in where we can get data. And the policy does say annually to reevaluate that. So we could actually monitor what those costs would be for the 1920 year, bring that back next June, and then take a look at that. It kind of puts us in a difficult spot because we've got a policy. We've been allowed to waive that for a certain amount of time, but now it is a board-directed policy, and our goal is we need to implement that unless directed in a different way.
Okay, so here we have some more scenarios. We took the same 4 groups that we looked at the first time, and we took into account the 7 p.m. time. So in this scenario, we had Youth Team 1, Youth Team 2, and the Adult League that had all of their hours of gym use before 7 p.m. So maybe they're practicing 5:30 to 7 or 5 to 6:30. And then we took Youth Team 3 that had the 3 hours a day, and we hypothesized that an hour of that was after 7. So they went up until 8 o'clock at night. So you can see that that significantly decreases the fee that would be assessed. It would really just be the facility use fee for Youth Teams 1, 2, and the Adult League. And like I said, now if Youth Team 1 and 2 were part of the same organization, they could even just be under that $500 piece. Youth Team 3, with just having an hour after the 7 p.m., that cost for and that's again 5 months, the January through May, is the custodial cost would be $18.48 for the 5 months, for the total of $23.48. Now in this, we went ahead and put if all the practice hours are after 7 o'clock, and that is the exact table that we had on that chart a couple minutes ago, but I just wanted to make sure that we could see everything comparatively. So we do have a lot of practices that go earlier, the 5 to 7, 5 to 8. Some of them go till 9. Like I said, some people are in until 10 o'clock. So, but this just kind of shows how that would look with the 7 o'clock time. Do you guys have any questions on that one?
Any other questions? Please proceed.
All right.
We do have a board-approved resolution that allows the superintendent flexibility to have MOUs with different entities within the city that approach her. The only MOU that we have right now is with the city of Rock Springs, and I did talk with J.J. Searoot at length, And JJ is sending us an updated list of what the City of Rock Springs sponsored events are. But he was very clear that he will be the one that requests the gyms or the fields if it's a City of Rock Springs event, because then we know that everything that is required to be the City of Rock Springs event has gone through him and is cleared. So, but right now that's the only MOU that we do have for any agreements that are in place.
One comment under the board-approved resolution, as Nicole mentioned with the MOU with the city, but if it's a governmental entity, of course, WWC, they're waived. BOCES is another great example for that. You know, we are the fortunate recipients of BOCES money that comes into the district, so of course we don't, you know, we reciprocate that with that entity as well. But the board has approved entering into the MOU with those governmental agencies. And so next step, so this is actually our last slide to get information. Stephanie is going to share about the facility scheduler just very quickly. She'll show about the online system, what that would look like to schedule an event. It's good information. And then some thoughts under that recommendation. Tonight in our June meeting, we are presenting some factual information that we have. A thought for the board to consider. So tonight we share information at the July meeting. Pending board approval, it would be on July 17th. Of course, that could be open for tonight public comment, of course, July for public comment as a board information item. And then in August, to respectfully ask the board as a board action item, whichever direction the board, the pleasure of the board would be for that. And then have full implementation of that ready to go for September 1. So we would still reserve those online. Those are ready to go now to schedule an event. But then any decisions for that, we could get that going up and running by September 1. And then that would be able to use debit cards, credit cards, and then also for us to gather information for that year. And then reevaluate again. And with that, we stand for any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know you probably won't know this off the top of your heads, but for next month on the board information, I was kind of thinking, how much are we expecting to raise over the course of the year based on what we know already? If you guys know, if you don't.
How much are we expecting to raise?
Yeah, how much money are we supposed to intake on these facility use fees?
Just depends.
Depends on which.
On either or. I mean, if you go $22 or $50 an hour.
If you went $25 an hour, you'd be right at $15,000 for outside entities.
Okay, so $15,000 is what we're talking.
For all.
Yeah, for all outside.
And like for Dan, this is going to be kind of pointed at kind of a question at you, but you brought up like mopping the floor and how, you know, the kids sweep it, but we always have to have a custodian do it. I mean, they have to do it after the day's gym classes anyway, right?
It's true.
I mean, so can we just do it the following morning? I'm trying
That's what they're currently doing.
Okay.
But if they come in that early to do it to get ready for the next day, that's why I said we staggered the group to 7 o'clock. I mean, you only have 8 hours that they're in a day, right?
Right.
So they either come in early to have the gyms ready, but they can't stay late enough to have the gyms ready unless. And the intent is to, if we go with the 7 o'clock, anybody, and no charge after 7, I have to shift their hours to 7. So at some point, the floor has to be done, probably more than likely by somebody other than them, because they're not going to be there, or we leave at 6. Then I have a building unattended from 6 o'clock to 9.
No, that makes sense. I was just curious.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So the event crew actually comes in and would take care of that.
Okay.
But I have to build a different type of event crew, because right now we can't hold people who, you know, show up to work. You might work or you might not.
Okay.
Could I add something to the event crew that was discussed? So Kelly kind of perked up in the meeting when we were talking, because she hasn't been dealing with facilities now for 5 years really. And we've been doing school safety, and when she found out that people have access to the buildings, and despite our best efforts of saying, do not prop the doors, they get propped, and then, and in all fairness, we have very respectful people that are using our facilities, but the reality is when the coach is coaching, and some of our buildings lock down very nice. Pilot View is one of them. East Side, we can lock down pretty good, but there's still a good portion that people could get to. So we're basically leaving our facilities open if we do not have a custodian or someone to do a final check, make sure all the windows are closed, doors are locked, and just scour everything to make sure nothing's been located. We all know, I hope it never happens, but with school shootings, we do know that the people come in after hours and they're placing things. Now, the high school's wide open. Like I said, we have buildings that we can lock down a little bit better. And so the importance of having someone there, and that would be the events crew that is going to be doing those security checks and making sure the building's locked down properly and that no one's, those kind of things taken into account. And when Kelly kind of was like, what do you mean no one is in some of these buildings? And we were like, we didn't just say that.
They did. They said it.
They didn't just say that. And the question was asked, there's a lot of school district employees that are there while their kids are practicing or they're helping coaching. Can they count as that person? Not necessarily, because you're not always going to be guaranteed that they're going to be there. They're going to be paying attention to the things that need to be paid attention to. So that was another thing that came into account from that 7 to 10.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Mr. Patolo?
Another question I have, maybe it's a caution, is the notion that if it sounds to me like we're saying we're not going to charge people if it's before this certain hour, and I understand that because we have custodians there and they can lock everything down and they can do all of that. I also hear you saying that there's going to be an online system to where you can register to do this. And I'm, as a former coach myself, the first thing I thought of was, well, if that online system goes open tonight at noon or at midnight, I'm going to be on there and I'm going to schedule every day I can get.
They've already done 3 years out.
Yeah, I mean, and isn't that a part of the problem? Is that some people are, as I've talked to you, Mr. Silver, earlier, there's people that have scheduled things and they don't show up half the time.
It'll charge them as they schedule it, which
until they're
hopefully will
assessed.
curb that a little bit. It
Do it.
wouldn't be till September 1st if the board approves, but we had that just up into this summer. Someone's like, oh yeah, I scheduled all the gyms because I didn't know if I'd get this one.
And when you get the invoice for all the gyms that Dan's been doing, then it's, whoa, wait a minute. Actually, I might,
So you're right when it comes to that.
And it's live and there's stuff in. I mean, we have people who have scheduled through 2021 already through facility use requests.
So at some point we have to kind of draw a line and say, hey, we're starting over with this and here's the strategy we have to give everybody the same opportunity to have the same.
They've all had the same opportunity. I mean, they're already putting in a facility use form the same way that they always have. My department has been putting the events in FS Direct, but it's already been in some cases a race. I mean, you see, as soon as the schedules come out, you see the basketball rep, come in to hurry and get the gyms reserved for the different schools. So it's not a wipeout. We're not going to take everything out that's already been put in. It's going to be the transition of, okay, now instead of filling out the JOT form, here's your account information to sign in and put your own request in. And the beautiful thing about the system is that right now they can't see if it's reserved already. So it's just a shot in the dark to see if you're going to be able to get, Pilot Beach Gym at 7 o'clock on a Thursday. But with this new system, and once we walk everybody through that, they'll be able to get in. It'll tell them right when they're reserving it that, if it's not available during that time frame.
So hopefully that'll improve it a little bit too.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way, that says, well, I'm going to get the times before I have to pay. But I don't think I am. I'm looking around the crowd, I see a lot of people written on their heads. The other thing is the high example. I can't imagine that we have anyone that's using the gym 4 times a week. Was that what I...
Oh, yeah.
You have organizations booking it or set all the separate teams that utilize it.
Oh, so it's not the same team?
It's not the same team.
Okay.
It's like an organization. Yeah.
Okay,
I've
well,
got
that
some
makes a little
every
more sense
day.
to me than saying my
Oh, yeah.
8-year-olds are gonna practice 4 times a week and for like 9 months.
You take the swim teams, and they go from the beginning of the month, 30 days, 31 days, 28 days. Every single day, including holidays, is blocked off.
And is that because of the form, that it's easier just
No.
to say
No,
January
no.
1st?
No, absolutely not.
Oh,
You
wow.
you can pick the dates. So that's what they get charged on. And if you were saying, hey, I'm gonna put in, because I wanna make sure I get a gym, and so you put in 3 different arenas, 3 different gyms, then you get this charge. Then yeah, you can call me up and say, hey, we're gonna cancel, or they're gonna call HR and cancel the 2 gyms. But in the meantime, that really did someone else a disservice who was trying to get one of those gyms.
Well, and the beautiful thing is that it's not going to be a crapshoot anymore for people. You don't put in your form and then just hope that you were the first person. You will be able to see right away, if it's been reserved, if you're going to be able to get in. If it's not, then you can look at the next school.
And is there any thought in this scenario here? I don't know the discussion the last time that the board went through to do this, to limit people and say, hey, let's be reasonable so everybody can have some time? Is there any?
The principals have started to do that.
Okay.
Honestly, most of them somehow finding a space where people are able to be, I shouldn't say easily, but through the different seasons of sports, able to accommodate some gym time somewhere, somehow, between the different ones. And those 6 are the ones that are used the most, but they might run into a conflict here, but the coaches get good at talking with each other to...
It almost seems like in high schools you have a scheduling conference. And you come in and you lay everything out. It almost seems like something like that would be a place where we could get people together that it would all of a sudden be reasonable. Or Dan and I are trying to do the same thing, and we say, well, you take these days, I'll take those days.
Well, it still goes through the school, and usually the principal or the secretary will look to see if there's a conflict. Because every once in a while, I'll get one that'll come through, and I can see that there's a conflict. And so I send it back to the secretary and say, you better have these folks check this out, because there's a conflict of schedule.
But it won't. I'll show you. I mean, as we walk through, you'll see kind of what the system looks like. The first thing that happens is the high school, so Dina sits down and she puts everything into FS Direct. So if you're wanting to reserve the high school for something, all of the, I shouldn't say all, stuff always comes up, but the majority of practices and events have already been scheduled through the system. So the conflicts aren't going to be as much of an issue when when JJ's getting in and putting the stuff in himself, and when, the Avengers folks are putting the stuff in. They'll be able to see what they can use and what's available. It'll block it out. I know it'll show a screenshot up here.
I'm sorry.
No. I understand and I honestly thought the same thing, but people, they've been doing it for years and it works. It seems pretty smooth and people seem reasonable, and I haven't heard of any. Now, I'm not the person they would come to, I'm sure, but I haven't heard of any big issues where I couldn't get my gym because freaking Nicole, took it 365 days out of the year.
I do that.
Mr. Hay?
Yeah, I just have a question on, ways that we can support the kids. And I don't know, Dan and Scott, we've both been on, all of us have been on the rec board. I know that there's some money there, but I would like to know if there's a way, or if the rec board would cover adult stuff and kid stuff, or is it just would be the kid funding? Do we know that? Is there any way we can find that information?
Yeah, I think in terms of the rec board that it could be either, because it goes, as wide as community use as well.
Okay. I didn't know if it would be just because I'm part of that. You said something that had to be associated with school district number 1, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it has to be part of within the boundaries of the district, so you couldn't go out to Green River and do it that way. But.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a provision for cancellation within so many days or something like that? How does that work?
Yes, so if they do cancel, then they wouldn't be charged that invoice. And we already do, we do refunds already for other issues throughout the district, for fees and fines if somebody ends up finding their textbook. But yes, if they cancel or they don't want to use it, and quite honestly, it could be that once they get their invoice, they're like, yeah, I actually didn't want it 5 days a week, I wanted it 3 days a week, I was just being cautious. Then they can work with us to change that. Yeah.
Mr. Mickelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments. I really appreciate you guys bringing this forward so early, right? Because it is a pretty substantive change. I also really, I very much.
We call these the chunky crayon directions.
Yeah, no, this literally, no matter how if you've seen a computer, this would walk you through how to reserve. I mean, it's very good.
Yeah.
And then I've had some feedback, not just this time, but in previous times when we've looked at this, and I always go back to sort of those community parallels. And I don't know if y'all have ever rented the ice arena or a party room at the Civic, and it is, I mean, the ice arena is like $200 an hour to rent, and the organizations that make use of those facilities are paying them because it increases the costs of those facilities. And so I very much appreciate the thoughtful approach that you all took to really drilling down what is sort of the minimum cost that we can address and bringing that out a whole month earlier than you actually needed to. So thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. I know it's really long. I'm not going to sit and read every slide to you, but this, my department, I love it. We work to make what we call chunky crayon directions so that anybody could pick something up and look at it and follow the directions. Before we jump in, I do want to let you know that every single person who has reserved a facility through our jot form has already had an account created. So the first several steps of this, where you create your FS Direct account, it's already been done. We will communicate with them and share out their login information as well as the directions post-account creation to let them know how to put their requests in. So I'm just going to whip through pretty fast because, like I said, I know it's really long. But we will have these available on the website in the PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format so that folks can work at their own speed. Also, anybody, whoever runs into any issues, can always just call my department, and we're happy to help them out. All right, so the first thing you do is go to the school district webpage, and then you see we have a link for facility reservation. I'll go ahead and point out that the policies link right there is the one that Nicole was talking about for all of the school policies. So if you click on facilities reservations, it will tell you to create an account. Now, if you've had an event at all, don't go create an account, okay? Because we really did set everybody up in the system. If you've done anything, if you've been listed as a person, you've already had an account created. So right now, still keep using the jot forms. We'll be sending some communication out. But you'll just click on the create an account. And the wording in that box is actually directly related to our KG policies. So they have to acknowledge that they've read the policy. All the folks who've already done this, they've been doing it on the papers. They did it through the jot forms, so it's kind of old news, and they have to accept that. Then they go through and put in their contact information, including an address, first name, email address, phone number. Those are really important things to put in because if there's an issue, we want to be able to contact you. All right, then you can add an organization. So I'm going to use you, Nicole, just because you're Nicole. So Nicole Bolton would create herself as a user, but then she would maybe associate herself to the Avengers organization. So what happens once you put in your request for an organization, we actually have to go in on our side and approve you for that. So this is to kind of keep 6 different types of Avengers being created in there, and also to make sure that we don't have duplicate users for organizations. So my staff gets in, we'll be getting in frequently to check and make sure that we don't have anybody waiting. All right. So you'll submit your request to the organization, and then it confirms that you were successful, and you're going to get an email saying that your request has been received. It says allow 1 work week, but anybody who knows Timmy Lou knows that he's right on top of everything. He's probably the main person who will be checking this initially, him and Lenny Lou as well. Once your request is approved, you get another email saying that you're ready to go, and once you're done once you receive that email, then you can actually go in and do your request for your facility. Set up like two separate directions, I know. So you'll go to facility reservations, and this time you're going to log in with your email address and the password that you created. You'll see at the top there's a tab that says request facility use. You'll also be able to see the calendar right there on that first page. So you can get in and see, if maybe you're looking, you know there's a basketball game, you don't know what time, you could actually come here to check out different facility uses. The beautiful thing about this, any of you who have been doing the jot form, it's wonky and you have to hand type stuff in, and the dates kind of work really funny because we didn't want to print more forms in triplicates, so we hurried and put something together for this year, well, for the 18-19 school year. So this is going to be much better. You're going to be able to do just a single date or a normal schedule or a recurring schedule. So if you're doing it weekly or monthly or daily in the same location, it's going to make it a lot easier for you. Now is where the print gets really small. So once you go in, you're going to be able to set, you'll choose your event description, the title of your event, your location in the building, the room. So we have the big stuff listed out. We have the gyms, I think we put the fields, the theater, just the different areas and the different schools that are used. Then you can search once you put your dates in, and this is what I was talking about, that it will let you know if there's something. So you can see in yellow, that's the time that's being requested, but you can see with the X's right there that the space is not available during that time. So it'll give you an opportunity to go and adjust your request. Right there, it'll give you a chance to go back and do a new room or a new time. Here you can check boxes, and I know not everybody does this, but this would actually be really handy for some of those big basketball tournaments or the theater pieces. I know when we do the Flaming Gorge Classic, we have to put several Raptor machines together because there's folks coming into the building during school hours, so that could fall under like the IT. So here is where an external user could come in and say that, yeah, we're going to need some custodians. Now, if that isn't, just because you don't check that box doesn't mean you're not going to get them. If you're going to be using the building on a Saturday, you're going to have some folks there. All right. The other thing that we have done for everyone, we've already uploaded the insurance for all of the organizations, including the expiration date. So when we first implemented the jot form, we made that a required field that you had to upload your insurance, and they're having to do it every time. Again, not the ideal thing because we knew that this was coming, but we went through and pulled all of the insurance for all of the organizations and loaded it with the expiration date. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible for folks who have been using our facilities for a really long time. They also would have the opportunity to provide the waiver in those cases that Nicole was talking about where maybe they don't have insurance, it's just some folks playing basketball together, so they can upload their waivers there also. Alrighty. This is the part where you can attach it, add the new file. You do have to have something there. We are required to have something, so you either have to have the waiver or you have to have your insurance. So for new folks coming in, these are some steps that they would go through. The people who've already been using it, you guys will already have it in there for you. All right, so then you'll also add the number of people that attend your event and click the save button. You'll sign, it's a digital signature down there. Again, you're acknowledging, yeah, you know our policy. If you've sat here tonight, I hope you know it really well at this point. All right, and then you get a confirmation for your event and your reservation's complete. So you can go back, you can look at the home to view the calendar. You'll get emails for each time your event's approved. So the process, it goes to a building secretary just to make sure there's no conflicts. Then the building administrator to approve. And then I can't remember if it's Dan or Nicole next, but Dan and Nicole are both involved. I think Nicole's the next person, and then Dan is the final approval where the fees are assessed.
I'm only involved if the fee gets waived, and I'm happy just being that. There are too many of them.
Okay, so if for some reason your reservations declined, maybe they didn't have a basketball practice or something listed in there for the school because the school events always take precedence, then you'll get an email letting you know that. And it will let you know the reason, the declined reason. The person who declines it can put that in there. And if it's approved, you'll get an email notifying you that it's approved and active. And at that point, it should start showing up on the calendar. Okay, so this is the invoicing piece. We won't I'll go a little bit into this, but these are the emails or an example of the email that you would get for the invoice to let you know for your request how much that's going to be. We will have a link, our Parent Square application that we got to replace Schoolway and School Messenger, yay, as well as Remind and Class Dojo and Team Up and all of those things. We are actually going to be able to work through that company to accept credit charges. So there will be a link there with put your invoice number in, put your amount in, and it'll walk folks through it that way. Okay, that was the fastest 28 slides I think I've ever done. Do you guys have any questions on the system?
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
Were the communications and correspondence or public comment? If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms which can be obtained from the district website. As per policies B, D, D, H, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. So public comment is now open.
She's not getting up.
No.
I had my turn.
Hello, members of the board. How are you?
Please state your name.
I'm Cody Fletcher. How are you doing? Good.
Please proceed.
I do have some concerns. Thanks for letting me express them. I believe myself and the community both have concerns on this, and they lead to several spots. On the particular club that I'm involved in, our fees are not very high. If we go to some of the fees that were posted up there, we will probably lose a lot of our kids that we currently have right now. I believe that you'll see that among all of the sports. So let's say that we have a 25% rate that we do lose. It puts them kids back out on the streets with no job to do, where these sports are a big part of their lives to stay out of trouble. So back on the community, I think we'll see a big impact on our community, not just the individual sport that whoever may speak about it, but back to our community. Also, I had heard of this prior to this coming up, so I did call many of the other coaches throughout the state of Wyoming. I have been told of no other school at this time that is doing that. All of the others have a used facility form and formula just as we do here, but none of them are doing that, including our town that's only 11 miles away or 12 miles away. Not just the sport I'm in, but no sport are they charging a use for. Now, I'd heard a lot, in particular to the sport that I do run, I'd heard a lot that this fee looks like it is being, that the custodial rate is one of the largest things that this fee is paying for. Is that correct? That as you guys understood it? We have not seen a custodian in over a year. We help provide cleaning supplies to the high school. We've provided half of the practice mats that we're on that are up there. We've provided the one mat that they do dual on. Our club has tried to be very proactive in working with the schools. But we will certainly, in our club, we will certainly lose many numbers of kids. And a lot of these families have 2, 3, or 4 kids in that household. So we lose not just a single kid from a household, but we may lose 3 or 4 out of the same household. And again, back to our community, that puts them kids out on the street with no jobs to do, which is going to increase a lot of our trouble with these young men and women. Any questions? Concerns?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent McGovern. back at our February 11th board meeting, we talked about, well, it was my facility plan. Part of my facility plan was that we discuss the demolition of Lincoln Elementary. At that time, my plan was approved, so as part of that approval was the possibility of looking into demolition of Lincoln Elementary. We've talked in the past about demoing that school because of the maintenance costs that are involved. Every day that we keep it open, we can't use it, but the roof still deteriorates, the grounds are still, water's still seeping into the basement. I had a phone call the other morning, and it was from one of the guys, well, he's actually the new administrator for school construction division, saying that there is a very high likelihood that we will get funded for the demolition of Lincoln Elementary this budget. So one of the things that we have not done, and I made it clear during my facility plan, was normally what they do is they have a public meeting first, and then they go and ask for the funding. I don't like doing that because if you have a public meeting first and you stir up everybody, and then the expectation is, when is this going to be raised? What are we going to put there? You know, everybody kind of gets anxious, and we don't have any hope of getting money for maybe 2 years. In this case, that was the best case scenario, was that we may get funding for this project in 2 years. It turns out that may not be the case. If we can get a public meeting prior to my July school facilities meeting here in Rock Springs, this will go on this year's budget to raise, demo Lincoln Elementary. We talked about what the cost of maybe renovating this building would be, and just back in 2016, when the state did a facility condition assessment of that building, back then to replace the components, not the building, but the components of the building, was $6.6 million. To bring the building up to what a new building would have, air conditioning, new lighting, things like that, it was $7.8 million. So that's not feasible. Right now, after our February meeting, I went ahead and started working with the state, and we put together a proposal, a budget worksheet for what we believe is a reasonable fee to go out to bid for demoing, Lincoln Elementary. I've got information, should anybody need it, as to where we are as far as on the school list to be demoed. One of the reasons why, even though we're down low into the 20s, they're willing to leapfrog us ahead is because we're not asking for a replacement. This is the demo of a building. And so I'm asking the board to look at, demoing this building. What I'd like to do is have the board move on our February meeting. The next step would be to hold a public comment on June 24th and get public input about, Lincoln Elementary. I have, we talked about room. This district is one of the most active districts I've ever been in. I know we just had a meeting on facility uses, and sometimes it's kind of ironic how I have to speak about another building. But we do need a building that is for the community, and I've been getting prices. I talked to Lenny this morning about, he's got a really nice building out on his property, and I do have prices coming. We talked in the past as well about, and it was this board and the previous board, about raising Lincoln and maybe someday putting a field house there that would accommodate, more activities, more sports. Plus maybe some stores, like 2,000 square foot storage for that end of town, which our facility department needs. So anyway, we need to hold a public meeting. I would like very much for the board to proceed forward on my facility plan and give me the okay to hold a public meeting on the 24th so that we can move into the next step of demoing Lincoln, and possibly the next step, putting that land to use.
Questions?
Direction?
Direction? I think we have a meeting scheduled for the 24th. So we do have a meeting scheduled for the 24th.
Okay.
So we can take it up at that time.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. McGovern?
one suggestion, and maybe this is what you were getting ready to just say, Dan, but when this opportunity came forward for Lowell Elementary, if we were able to hold a public hearing for that on the 24th, we would advertise for that, of course, get information out to our community so we can share that with our media outlets. And then also to make sure that it's very open for people to come in and gather comment. And then also for the 24th meeting, knowing that that is a special board meeting and that we do need to advertise every item on that agenda, that we would advertise that it would be a board action item in front of the Board of Education. And then at that meeting, this board, should they choose, could approve one way or another for that direction. But it could have the public comment held right before. Thank you.
If that would be the consensus of the board, then that way I would have the direction for the select committee.
Okay, I believe that's the consensus.
Okay.
That's the consensus.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about it? Okay, thank you.
Any further public comment?
Mark Cholock, small-time taxpayer. I guess I have a question about the purpose of the public hearing on raising Lincoln School, since it seems as if the decision to demolish the school has already been made. What would be the purpose? What would be what kind of information would you be gathering on at a public hearing? Or would it just be a proposal for?
Statute would require a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, statute would require it.
All right. Law says. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Good evening, Board. Mr. Montgomery. My name is Dirk Anderson. I am a co-founder of one of your youth programs, basketball, boys basketball. I have since started developing Youth Girls Travel Basketball League. Just want to give you a little bit of background. I've been doing this since about the mid-2000s. We've put hundreds of athletes through your school programs once they get out of my hands and they get into the junior high school levels. I would like to go back to what Cody said. We have a lot of underprivileged kids, youths that come through our programs. And we do find a place for these kids. We find a purpose for these kids. A lot of them can't afford it. A lot of us as coaches put a lot of our time and our money back into these kids. We do some fundraising, but not everybody likes fundraising. Not all of our businesses like being hit up 1,000 times a year, because I hear it every time I take my kids in. And we volunteer our time to try to fundraise. We don't do bake sales. We actually go into businesses and ask them if we can help do something around their business for a small donation. My next comment would be to the staff here, the senior leadership. I appreciate your sincere enthusiasm and your honesty towards your staff, but I'm going to respectfully disagree on a lot of the notions that they presented to you in their schedule. For the last 10 to 12 years, I have had a gym. We get there 2 to 3 days a week. My boys sweep it every day prior to practice and after practice. There have been times we have intentionally missed places to see if our custodians are cleaning like we have been told that they do. Not to get anybody in trouble, because I've never been up here complaining to anybody, but now that it's being presented to you that they do these things on a regular basis, that's just factually untrue. I've actually seen spilled juice, spilled pop, gum on the gym floors at Pilot Butte that have been left for weeks. I've actually gone and found custodians, asked for a mop or a broom so we can sweep it so our kids are safe at school. So with that, I don't understand all the breakdown. I saw it all. I absolutely saw it all, and I can respect that that stuff is being used periodically throughout the school year, but is it being used equally throughout each club sport or club? Because you're going to charge everybody the exact same for it if it's after 7. Brings me to my next question. Are we charging our school youth or our school athletic clubs or our drama teams or our theater teams? Because as somebody here presented, we had to go out and find somebody that can run the lights correctly. We have to find somebody that can put our seats down correctly. We have to find somebody that can put the basketball down, the nets down correctly. None of those services have ever been provided to me or my club. Not one time. And I can say that with 100% conviction. They just have not. My boys have offered and volunteered to clean up, help around school grounds. We've always been told no. So with that, I just want it to be asked, is a one set fee for all clubs the right way to go, or should it be on a base-to-base or case-to-case basis? Because there is just no reason for one club that has 7 kids on it, and Miss Bolton said this is a very small number. If you spread it out within 100 kids, it may be, but I don't have 100 kids. I have 7 each year. So that number exponentially gets bigger. And I take a lot of underprivileged youth. They can't afford it. Plain and simple. They can't. And I'm not saying it's your guys' job to provide that for them, but it's a great opportunity that you have provided for them in the past. To take it away from them would be an injustice, I believe. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Chairman Jellicoe and members of the board. I just need to clarify 2 points there. We do not. He asked if we charge our school-sponsored sports and activities and things. We do not. So that is information that needs to be out there. Second off, I don't want to put off the impression that I'm minimizing the fee if it's broke down. It was an example. If a club had 100 kids, that would be the fee on top of their registration fee. I don't want it to come off like I was minimizing it at a small amount, because I know the smaller groups too, it would be more. So that would be on top of the fees that the groups are charging.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Hello, my name is Michael Hansen. I know some of you in the room as coaches, teachers, friends. I, like Dirk Anderson, wanted to stand up and just talk about what we've got going on here. I do appreciate everything that our staff's doing, our board's doing. This website will be great for not only them, but for us, for the other people of the community to go into the gyms. When we first started our basketball, I've had several kids that have gone through that coach, because that's what I did. I played sports when I was young. And sports is actually what kept me going successfully in school. And that's something that we haven't talked about yet. These young programs are getting our kids in the gym at a young age. It's making them better students. It's making them better people in our community, like they were saying. We have these underprivileged kids that are also trying to play multiple sports, not just one sport. Do soccer, do basketball, do wrestling. So they can strive to be better people, well-rounded people, which will then translate into better students, which then translate into better community members. So if we do it, just like Dirk was saying, if you have a large group, this is the fee. Yeah, it does not affect that group as much as it would. I'm in the same boat as Dirk Anderson. The groups that we coach, we're youth team 1. We have 7 kids on our team. $5,300 is the bill we got. That is not a number that we could sustain with those 7 girls, because 2 of those students have reduced price lunches. Their parents are not able to travel to the tournaments with the kids. They go with the other coaches. So if we do raise these prices or can't come to a usage fee that's acceptable, we will lose some of these programs. We'll lose some of these kids, these underprivileged kids. We'll lose them in not only athletics, we'll lose them in education as well, which then we'll lose them in, being a successful community member in life later on. So when we're going through the fee, I do agree. The usage fee, absolutely. I understand we're so grateful to have this great community, have all these gyms, have all these parents, people that want to step up and coach, donate their time, you guys allowing us to use your facilities. I think that's fantastic. I just hope that there's when we're voting on a fee, a schedule, we can come up with a number that will work with everyone, that will make it successful, so we can get into these gyms, we can get into the swimming pool, we can get into the auditoriums, we can get into the wrestling rooms, we can get out on the fields when it's nice, on the tennis courts, all of those things. So hopefully we can come together as a community and find a number that works for everybody, so we can get everybody in there. So not only, we can get the gym refinished, we can get the tennis court refinished, we can start these kids in 3rd grade as athletes, as students, follow them all the way through into high school, so our high school programs are more successful, and then watch them go to college, know that they came from our community, and know that we all made a difference. Thank you, guys.
All right, good evening, board. I just kind of want to piggyback off of them. My name is Kim Fouts, and I'm here as a parent. I am a staff member. These guys do a great job, and I do agree that there has to be a system set in place. I sit on 2 different activity boards, the basketball, Little League basketball, and the baseball board. And I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me. But I just know, for basketball, we have to use basketball gyms. So I have a couple points to take into consideration that all these little leagues, I don't think they ever try to make money. We literally break even on everything, maybe to have a little bit extra money to replace equipment. But I know using gyms for 3 months for Little League boys basketball will be a big amount of money for us. And it will probably break. I know we had over 200 Little League basketball players just this year. And it'll probably break a lot of that and having to up our fees. I feel like we are already paying a lot of high fees, and especially if our kids are in multi-sport. The second thing I'd like to take into consideration would be the price adjustment from 5 to 7 and then 7 o'clock and after. I feel like all of us that are kind of fighting to fill out our forms would be fighting for the 5 to 7 o'clock spot because it's cheaper than after 7. And I understand the custodians and all that kind of stuff, but just a consideration of the prices versus the 5 to 7 from the 7 after, that we're all going to kind of be fighting for the 5 to 7 o'clock slot, and how that will come, if it will be based off of when you submit the forms and stuff like that. So I just would like you to take into consideration all these kids that are in so many activities. We really are all feeder programs to our high school. I have heard talk in the community that because Green River, and I don't want to compare, but a lot of the things don't happen over in Green River, that people talk, it could be all rumor, that they want to start looking at their kids going over there, and I think that's the last thing that we want. But we truly are all feeder programs to our high school and want to support our junior high and our high school and all that they're doing. So thanks.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Hi, my name is David Stauffer. I also coach a youth basketball team. I've been in and out, so I apologize if I missed this, but could I get clarification on, are we only charging this fee for gyms, or are we charging this for, and we talked about fields, but are we talking about for track, for swimming, for people taking, piano lessons or whatever musical instrument. Can someone just explain to me, is this fee for any use of our schools? Is it just gyms? Could I get maybe some clarification on that?
Who wants to take it, Kelly?
I'll go ahead. Since I assess all the fees, everybody gets assessed a fee. It does, if they're using a track outside, no. But if they're using, like if they're having a track and field meet and they're going to use the field house, then the fee is assessed for the field house, for the paper towel products, cleaning, and things like that. So yeah, the reason why we use the gyms is because the gyms is kind of the focal point, and that kind of gives us a balance of what we use product-wise. But yeah, we do charge if somebody uses the auditorium, there's a fee. If somebody comes in and uses, any of the spaces that are like in a cafeteria space for a presentation, there's a fee. I mean, everybody gets assessed fees. If they use classroom spaces, they get assessed a fee.
So if we, if I understand correct, the outside activities, if they're not using a bathroom, they don't get assessed a fee. Is that correct?
If they don't use the field house, correct.
Okay. So if we just don't use the bathrooms, can we not have a fee to use the gym? That's we don't.
Of the building is still an issue. Like, I think security is a big thing for the custodial charge. That somebody's there to make sure that the building is secure, not just bathrooms.
And we're only concerned about the inside of the buildings. I guess I'm just. It's frustrating, and we're in the same boat as multiple of these people who have spoken. That when you're looking at the bigger organizations, they can build this into a budget. And when we're talking about 5, 6, 7 kids, if this passes the way that it's approved, you're going to have a lot of teams that probably are going to stop operating. And so I would just highly suggest you consider very carefully the fee that would be assessed. I agree with Mike Hansen. There should be some kind of a fee to use it so that we can maintain our facilities. But when you make it an astronomical fee for these small groups, and we haven't even talked about, with Mr. Hay here, with Farson, that's the only facility that kids in Farson have to use for anything. And so if you start charging them for a fee that's really $50 or even $22 an hour for them to use the school in Farson.
Why did you bring it up?
I think we need to just consider very carefully the amount that you decide to charge so that we don't put these kids who are trying to do positive things out fighting for time at the rec center or wherever it is or nowhere if you're talking about Farson. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Twice? Public comment is closed. We'll proceed with the treasurer's report. Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, start on the general fund. We had a beginning balance of $16,588,777. We received $23,042,687. We had warrants written of $16,518,000. We had an ending cash balance of $23,116,306.04. For the school lunch program, as we all know, lunch is closed, so this number is starting to change a little bit more. But we had deposits of we had a cash balance of $405,290.56. We had deposits of $46,766.07. Our school meal reimbursement was $107,303.23. Total balance at the end of the day was $573,551.70. We had warrants of $208,807.98. Some bank transfers in there, but those all balance out all the way through. Ending balance of $351,157.81. For Head Start, we had a beginning balance of $54,638.96, deposits of $140,968.03, and ending balance, we had warrants cleared of $139,153, with an ending balance of $56,453.99.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Mr. Jackman, the warrants.
The warrants from May 10th to June 11th were check number 128835 through 129670. They totaled $6,712,127.28. As it stands, I don't remember any warrants that were a conflict, but if they have the last name Jackman, they are a conflict.
I do want to declare a conflict on warrant number 129443. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and or removed from this section. Minutes. 8A, approval of the minutes from the May 13th, 2019 regular board meeting. 8B, approval of the minutes from the May 13th, 2019 executive session. 8C, approval of the minutes from the May 30th 2019 special board meeting and public hearing. Finance. 8D, approval of the authorization of the superintendent of schools to sign federal forms. 8E, approval of the disclosure statements, conflict of interest, public investment. 8F, approval to authorize the purchase of bulk teacher and office supplies for use throughout the district. 8G, approval of the white copy paper bid for the 2019-2020 school year. 8H, approval to authorize the annual renewal of licensing for the Alio software package. 8I, approval to move the regularly scheduled July board meeting to Wednesday, July 17th, 2019. Personnel. 8J, approval of personnel recommendations. Technology. 8K, approval to purchase Parent Square. 8L, approval to purchase neoprene slip sleeves from Troxel. 8M, approval to renew Frontline software. 8N, approval to renew BrainPop. 8O, approval to renew IXL Learning. 8P, approval to renew Adobe Creative Cloud licenses. 8Q, approval to renew Public School Works. 8R, approval to accept the bids for Westridge and North Park Elementary School cameras. 8S, approval to renew Optimizon Fleet Acquisition and Management Services. 8T, approval to declare obsolete iPads as surplus property and advertise for sale. 8U, approval to renew Writer, Snap, and Read and UPAR licensing. 8V, approval to accept the bids for Westridge and North Park Elementary Schools network equipment. Nutrition services. 8W, approval of the bid for milk and dairy products for the 2019-2020 school year. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve items 8A through 8W.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. McGovern.
just for clarification for the board, on the consent agenda, item 8U on the backup documentation, it says this is a sole source purchase funded through title. Those two numbers or the letters got transposed. It's a Title 6B grant. We don't have a 4B grant, so it's 6B, just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve items 8A through 8W. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 9, transportation. 9A for board information, the school bus routes for the 2019-2020 school year are attached. Item number 10, general board business. 10A, approval of the student harassment and violence policy. 10B, approval of policy JFCL, student bullying policy. 10C, approval of the staff harassment and violence policy. 10D, approval of policy GBCC, staff bullying policy. 10E, approval of policy DN, school properties disposal procedure. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for items 10A, B, C, and E.
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Item 10D, approval of policy GBCC, staff bullying policy. Mr. Vitolo.
Stephanie's not here, so I just wanted to say that there's a statement in there that should have said an electronic report.
Yeah.
It just says electron, and I don't know if that makes any difference. If we approve that and it says electron.
No, we'll fix the few typos that we
Sorry.
found in there. No, you're fine. You didn't know what an electron was?
Yeah, but
Actually, Nicole and I talked a little bit earlier about some, same thing that was on 10D.
And like I said, Stephanie's not here, so she would usually do that for us.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for 10D, approval of policy GBCC.
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 11, graduation dates for 2020. 11A, Rock Springs High School, Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Black Butte High School, Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, 7 p.m. Parson Eden High School, Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, 6 p.m. And Desert School reception, Thursday, May 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. So that's for board information. So please adjust your calendars almost a year in advance. Good of the order. Anyone? Mr. Jackman?
Madam Chair, just a heads up. I have been brought to my attention that there's a potential conflict of interest with me being on the rec board and the facilities committee. So I'm going to be resigning those two committees effective immediately.
Okay. Thank you. Any other good of the order? I just wanted to mention that I did attend the joint education meeting last week in Casper. The committee directed LSO to look into drafting legislation that would lift the cap on special ed, which is something that we are hoping for. There was also some information regarding the transportation mileage and things like that, that it's being considered. There was considerable pushback from districts on that as well. So Senator Coe usually gets a very prompt meeting, and the meeting was supposed to adjourn at 1 o'clock, and we did not adjourn until 2:30. So that tells you something about the input that was there. So they are hearing it from multiple places, but that is the direction of some of the legislation. So hopefully the next meeting in Cody, that legislation hopefully will move forward with the recommendation. So that should be good news. Any other good of the order? Okay, new business, item number 13. Board information, policy JED, student attendance and absences. 13B, board information, policy IGBCA, children and youth in transition or homeless children. 13C, board information, policy IKF, graduation requirements. 13D, the vacancy notice, supplemental information will be provided on Thursday, June 6, 2019, which we have, and so we also have an addendum that we're going to come back to. 13E, calendar for the months of June, July, August, and September 2019. 13F, May 2019 Head Start Liaison Report. Number 14, board information. 14A, the student laptop handbook. And then let's go to the addendum. Okay, the addendum is, please, if you have any items that you want to hold and discuss, please say so. Item number 1, personnel. Item number 2, facilities. 2 quotes were obtained for the purchase of stage system for Farson Eden. And then B, a recommendation to approve Crest Consulting LLC as the owner's rep for the Satellite High School project. Nutrition services, a recommendation to authorize the district's Department of Nutrition Services to purchase 8 vending machines. B, recommendation to authorize the district's Department of Nutrition Services to purchase equipment as outlined. And that recommendation is to award the bid to Restaurant and Store Equipment Company. General board business. A, recommend approval to authorize Rock Springs High School to initiate the purchase for football equipment, helmets, shoulder pads, knee pads, and scrimmage vests for $11,931.32. Equipment will be funded through the Rock Springs High School Associated Students account. And number 5, general board business. The board committee information has been revised to honor Mr. Jackman's resignation from the rec board and also the facilities committee. So I'll entertain a motion for the addendum. It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Then, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Yes. Second. All in favor, please say aye. And aye, and opposed, nay. The meeting is adjourned.